You were taught to fear the shadows in others, but no one warned you about the ones quietly forming inside yourself. The moment you stop performing innocence, the world reveals its real architecture, silent rules, hidden leverage, unspoken hierarchies. And when you finally see it, you understand, power was never loud, it was always the pause before the move. If you feel the shift beginning inside you, stay, your next evolution is already watching. A quiet fracture forms the moment your mind realizes the world never promised fairness, and the air around that truth tightens like metal cooling too fast. You watch effort dissolve while manipulation thrives in microglances, subtle delays, and the timing people think you don't notice. Insight stirs as you see how often you rewrote betrayals into softer stories, hoping the pattern wasn't what it clearly was. And inside that echo, a question sharpens. What changes when you stop negotiating with illusions and start upgrading the intelligence that keeps you alive? A slow pressure builds when you replay moments where someone's smile didn't match their eyes, and your awareness catches how you ignored the mismatch. You feel the internal recoil when you remember how many times advantage moved silently towards someone less qualified. Clarity appears as you recognize that the problem was never your effort, it was assuming others played by the rules you honored. The echo lingers. If fairness is not the terrain, how does your strategy transform? There's a tightening in your chest when you see how predictable your reactions have been, almost scripted by old expectations you never questioned. You recall pauses you filled too quickly, truths you volunteered too openly, and openings others used before you even knew they were openings. A sharper awareness rises as you notice the machinery beneath social behavior, micro-hesitations, calculated kindness, strategic silence. And from beneath that awareness, another loop returns. What power emerges when you stop handing people a map of your weaknesses? A thin internal vibration begins when you realize how much you've relied on good intentions as a compass instead of reading behavior as data. Your memory pulls forward tiny signals you once dismissed, a rushed compliment, a delayed reply, a convenient misunderstanding. Understanding snaps into place. Dark intelligence is not cynicism but perception unfiltered by hope. The thought returns with weight. If you stopped assuming softness in a world built on leverage, what would you finally see? A deeper stillness settles when you grasp that you never truly chose your first thought, only your response to it. You sense the distance between who you were when you believed fairness was structural and who you become when you see it was never part of the design. A new voice forms, low and unsentimental, teaching you to watch before acting, to wait before revealing, to sense before trusting. And in that voice, an unanswered question opens its own doorway. If betrayal once broke you, what happens now that it builds you instead? Something shifts inside you when a familiar sting returns, but this time your mind doesn't collapse inward, it observes. You notice how humiliation once flooded your system, blinding you to the micro-messages hiding inside the moment. Insight surfaces as you replay the scene not for drama, but for pattern, the tone change, the delayed breath, the eyes avoiding responsibility. And the echo asks quietly, if pain is a message, what happens when you finally listen? A restrained tension forms as you revisit old defeats, watching how each one exposed a blind spot long before you named it. You feel the old emotional surge rise, but it loses its authority, shrinking into something you can study rather than drown in. Recognition appears. People didn't surprise you. You ignored the early indicators because they were inconvenient. The whisper returns. What becomes possible when you analyze instead of apologize? A subtle burn runs through your awareness as you track how disappointment taught you more than praise ever did. You recall the moment someone betrayed your trust with a half smile that didn't reach their eyes, the kind you dismissed as stress. Clarity tightens around the realization that experience is not cruelty, it is calibration. And the loop deepens. If pain sharpens your perception, why keep resisting the blade that shapes you? A quiet internal stillness forms as you sense your reactions maturing, less flinch, more focus, less story, more signal. You notice how anticipation replaces shock, how early detection replaces heartbreak, how grounded detachment replaces emotional chaos. Understanding blooms. Resilience is not stoicism, it is pattern recognition learned the hard way. The returning echo asks, what would life look like if every wound became a map? A strange empowerment rises when you see that you no longer fear pain because you no longer misunderstand it. You read betrayals earlier, choose people more precisely, move with more intention because the noise has turned into data. And in that shift, your emotions stop driving the car, they become indicators on the dashboard you finally know how to interpret. Pause for a breath and let this land. What if your pain was never meant to break you, but to brief you? There's a quiet authority in the moment you stop offering people a high-resolution portrait of your inner world. You notice how often oversharing came from anxiety, a need to be understood before you were even safe. Insight sharpens as you see how mystery shifts the dynamic. People lean in when they realize they don't have full access. And a thought returns. What power emerges when imagination fills the gaps you no longer rush to fill? A subtle tension rises when you recall times you explained yourself too quickly, smoothing over truths others hadn't earned. You sense how your words once gave away leverage, micro-confessions disguised as honesty, timing too precise to be accidental. Clarity forms as you understand that restraint isn't coldness, it's calibration. And the echo asks, if you shared half as much, how differently would people behave around you? A deliberate stillness settles each time you speak only what's necessary, letting silence hold the rest like a locked drawer. You watch how others reveal themselves in the openings your quiet creates, nervous laughs, rushed justifications, impulsive questions. Insight grows. Mystery is not performance but protection, a boundary disguised as elegance. And the loop returns. What becomes possible when your next move is sensed but never seen? A controlled distance emerges when you treat your words like currency instead of noise spilling into the room. You feel how choosing one concise sentence shifts the power dynamic more than a paragraph ever did. Understanding crystallizes. People respect what they cannot easily read. And the internal question deepens. If your presence carried more weight than your explanations, who would you become? A sharpened awareness surfaces as you realize your opacity is not a mask. It's a strategy that reveals selectively rather than completely. You notice how your withheld stories create space for others to project, interpret, and adjust themselves to you. And in that subtle gravitational pull, influence grows without force or volume. Let the insight settle for a moment. What if saying less is the only way to be truly seen? There's a subtle awakening when you notice how your tone shifts naturally depending on who stands before you. You watch your mind adjust, softer edges for the insecure, sharper clarity for the evasive, steadiness for the chaotic. Insight emerges. Adaptation is not performance but intelligence responding to context. And a familiar echo rises. If water changes shape without losing itself, why shouldn't you? A tension forms when you recall moments you stayed rigid, speaking in one language while the other person listened in another. Your awareness replays the micro mismatches, timing off by a breath, gestures misunderstood, intentions lost in translation. Clarity follows. Influence comes from meeting people where they are, not where you wish they were. And the question returns. What shifts when your communication becomes architecture instead of impulse? A quiet precision grows as you start reading how others process the world, some through logic, some through emotion, some through imagery, some through structure. You see how speaking in someone's native psychological language opens doors effort never could. Insight appears. Adaptability is not bending your truth, it is delivering it in the form they can receive. And the loop deepens. Who might you reach if you stopped expecting one style to fit all? A light internal stretch begins when you sense your core staying intact while your expression reshapes itself effortlessly. You notice the difference between authenticity and rigidity. The first breathes, the second breaks. Understanding stabilizes. Your identity is the substance, the persona is the container. And the echo whispers, if you controlled the container with intention, how many worlds could you move through? A deeper calm forms as you realize adaptability is a superpower hidden inside everyday interactions. You see it in micro-timing adjustments, in matching pace, in mirroring someone's emotional temperature without absorbing it. And in mastering this, you become someone who belongs everywhere without losing who you are. Pause and feel this truth. What if your flexibility is the doorway to the power you've been circling all along? A quiet liberation begins when you notice how tightly you once clung to things that offered safety but demanded self-betrayal. Your awareness lingers on the fear of loss, jobs, relationships, approval, and how that fear scripted your reactions. Insight sharpens as you see that attachment wasn't love or commitment, it was dependency wearing noble clothing. And a familiar echo rises, if nothing owns you, who can truly move you? A subtle tension appears when you remember moments you stayed silent to keep the peace, even as your intuition tightened like a pulled thread. You watch how desperation distorted your boundaries, making you easier to influence with a single look or delayed reply. Clarity forms, control enters through whatever you cannot afford to lose. And the loop returns. What shifts when your worth stops living in someone else's hands? A grounded stillness settles when you sense the difference between caring deeply and depending completely. Your mind replays scenes where detachment would have given you clarity, conversations you forced, decisions you over-explained, exits you delayed. Insight emerges, freedom is not distance, it is sovereignty. And the question deepens, if you walked away sooner, what pain would you have never needed to survive? An inner recalibration occurs as you recognize how much stronger you negotiate when you're not bargaining with your self-respect. You catch micro moments where confidence replaced fear, your voice steady, your pauses intentional, your no clean and unshaken. Understanding appears, paradoxically, the less you fear losing something, the more it tends to flow toward you. And the echo lingers. What opportunities are already circling now that you're no longer grasping? A broader space opens within you as you release the illusion that control comes from holding tight. You feel the clarity that comes from choosing, not chasing, from engaging, not clinging, from loving, not needing. And in that clarity, you finally see reality without the fog of attachment. Let this truth settle. If nothing can take your center, what in this world can truly break you? There's a subtle shift the moment you realize influence grows in the spaces you don't fill. You watch how silence makes others reveal their intentions, rushed explanations, wandering eyes, the micro-fidget that exposes insecurity. Insight forms as you recognize that presence is a strategy, not an accident. And the echo asks, what power emerges when your calm speaks louder than your voice? A steady pressure builds when you recall times you over-explained, trying to prove competence to people who weren't even listening. You sense how much leverage you lost by rushing to fill the quiet, giving away certainty before they earned clarity. Understanding follows, restraint carries a gravity volume never does. And the loop returns. What shifts when you let others feel the weight of your pause? A grounded awareness rises as you notice how preparation transforms you into the person others rely on without knowing why. You see it in micro patterns, heads turning subtly toward you in uncertainty, people waiting for your reaction before choosing theirs. Insight crystallizes, silent leverage is built long before the moment it's needed. And the internal question deepens, what foundations are you laying when no one is watching? A deeper stillness forms when you recognize that options you never mentioned shape the room more than arguments you deliver. You feel the quiet confidence of having alternatives, even unspoken ones, shifting the balance in your favor. Clarity lands, the mere possibility of walking away is its own form of authority. And the echo whispers, who treats you differently when they sense you are not trapped? An almost invisible power emerges as you cultivate usefulness instead of noise, solving problems, staying steady, observing cleanly. You notice how the environment adjusts around you, as if your presence calibrates the room. And this influence grows not through intimidation, but through undeniable consistency. Pause and let this settle. If silence became your strategy, what truths would finally rise to the surface? If this is hitting close to home, take a second, like the video, subscribe, and stay with me. A quiet intelligence awakens when you stop listening for words and start listening for what's hiding beneath them. You sense the tremor in someone's tone, the micro drop in their shoulders, the brief pause before truth slips out sideways. Insight appears. People speak in emotional frequencies long before they speak in sentences. And the echo asks, what happens when you understand the feeling behind the story more clearly than they do? A subtle pull forms as you reflect someone's inner world back to them with precision they didn't expect. You watch their eyes soften, their breath deepen, their guard loosen, not because you agree, but because you see. Clarity arises. Validation is not endorsement. It is recognition of the human beneath the defense. And the loop returns. Who do people become when they realize you're actually paying attention? A quiet mirroring begins when you shift your focus from replying to decoding, security, recognition, freedom, belonging. You notice how framing your message around someone's core need bypasses their resistance entirely. Insight sharpens, psychological echo is resonance, not manipulation. And the question deepens, if you spoke to the need, not the noise, how many conflicts would dissolve? A deeper connection forms when you name the emotion behind the mask, frustration camouflaged as anger, fear disguised as logic, sadness hidden in precision. You feel the micro-release in their posture when they realize they don't have to translate themselves for you. Understanding blooms. Trust is built in the moment someone feels seen without effort. And the internal echo whispers, what power lives in being the one person who actually notices? A soft confidence grows as you realize this skill makes you magnetic, leaders rise from it, partners deepen through it, negotiations bend toward it. You see how people open, confess, adjust, align, simply because your presence reflects their truth back with clarity and kindness. And within that influence, your own emotional intelligence matures silently. Take a slow breath and let this land. What if seeing others clearly is the very thing that finally teaches you to see yourself? A quiet dissonance forms when you admit the world rarely offers clean choices, only gradients of consequence. You notice how your old belief in being good often kept you frozen while others moved decisively through moral gray. Insight rises. Morality without flexibility becomes a cage, not a compass. And the echo asks, what if doing the right thing sometimes looks wrong in the moment? A subtle tension returns when you recall situations where kindness enabled harm, your silence protecting someone's pattern instead of their growth. You feel the weight of choices you didn't make, opportunities you surrendered to avoid discomfort. Clarity appears. Avoiding difficulty is not morality. It is fear wearing ethical clothing. And the loop whispers, who pays the cost when you choose what looks gentle over what is necessary? A deeper breath settles in when you realize values mean nothing until they collide with real-world pressure. You sense which lines inside you are unbreakable, and which can bend without betraying your core. Insight crystallizes. Ethics are lived through outcomes, not optics. And the returning question tightens. Who might you become if you judge decisions by impact instead of appearance? A low internal vibration begins as you accept that leadership requires decisions that won't earn applause, only results. You replay micro moments where firmness would have protected many, but your hesitation protected one. Understanding sharpens. Responsibility sometimes demands choices that won't make you likable. And the echo presses. If intention is clean and outcome is protective, why fear temporary misunderstanding? A steadier self emerges as you integrate flexibility with integrity, non-negotiable principles paired with adaptive judgment. You see how this balance frees you from the performance of virtue and roots you in the practice of wisdom. And in that freedom, the world becomes navigable rather than morally impossible. Pause here. What if your true moral strength is the ability to hold the gray without losing your center? A subtle awareness forms when you realize how much of your past you once handed out like free samples to people who hadn't earned context. You notice how oversharing blurred your boundaries, giving others shortcuts into your psychology. Insight sharpens. Disclosure is not connection, it is strategy. And the echo returns. What would change if you decided your story must be released in chapters, not dumps? A quiet recalibration begins as you map who actually needs access to which parts of you, and why. You catch the micro-hesitation before posting, sharing, confessing, and recognize it as wisdom, not insecurity. Clarity rises. Information is power precisely because it can be weaponized. And the loop asks, who has earned the version of you they keep demanding? A deeper intentionality appears the moment you stop revealing everything at once. You watch how curiosity grows in others when you create space instead of spilling details, longer eye contact, slower questions, more careful tone. Insight lands. Mystery increases value because rarity commands respect. And the echo deepens. What happens when your silence becomes your strongest filter? A strategic coolness forms as you curate your personal and digital footprint like an architect instead of an impulsive narrator. You feel the shift when each disclosure becomes purposeful, timed, directed, and aligned with who you are becoming. Understanding blooms. Your future identity deserves protection from your past impulses. And the returning question cuts cleanly. What are you building that requires a more disciplined version of you? A quiet authority grows as you master revealing in layers, enough to build trust, never enough for others to steer your life. You sense how this controlled transparency strengthens your relationships, your negotiations, and your internal peace. And beneath that strength lies a simple truth. Privacy is not secrecy, it is sovereignty. Pause and consider this. If you controlled the narrative of your life with precision, who would you finally become? A quiet clarity rises the moment you stop treating life like a debate to win and start treating it like a mission to complete. You notice how often ego pulled you sideways, defending yourself, proving a point, chasing validation instead of progress. Insight tightens. Being right has destroyed more outcomes than being wrong with intention. And the echo asks, what result do you actually want here? A subtle tension forms as you replay times you argued past the point of usefulness, words sharp, timing off, energy misplaced. You feel how your need to look competent overshadowed the goal itself. Clarity appears. Effectiveness requires the death of performative pride. And the loop returns. What shifts when results matter more than impressions? A deeper stillness grows when you realize how selective effort becomes a superpower. You see how doing fewer things with higher precision outperforms doing everything with scattered urgency. Insight crystallizes. Outcome obsession is efficiency with integrity, never laziness, always intention. And the question lingers, which actions actually move the needle in your life? A grounded confidence forms as you stop chasing approval and start aligning decisions with long-term gain. You feel the internal pivot when you choose silence over ego, patience over impulse, redirection over resistance. Understanding settles. Outcomes define your trajectory, ego only defines your mood. And the echo deepens. What future opens when you stop negotiating with distractions? A sharp internal alignment appears when your goals become non-negotiable but your methods remain flexible. You sense how adaptability merges with discipline, turning every setback into strategy instead of self-doubt. And in that shift, you become the person who delivers, not dreams, not argues, not waits. Let this truth settle. If results became your compass, what version of you would finally emerge? You leave this video carrying a quieter mind, a sharper awareness, and a new internal architecture that no one else can touch. Every pattern you once feared is now a blueprint, every wound is now a briefing, every silence is now a tool you can wield with precision. Let this transformation continue. Pause before reacting, notice before trusting, act only when alignment replaces impulse. And ask yourself with honesty, What becomes possible when you no longer negotiate with who you used to be? Carry this intelligence forward, observe differently, move strategically, and let detachment refine your judgment instead of hardening your heart. Return to these ideas whenever the world feels chaotic. They will hold their shape even when everything else shifts. If this awakens something in you, watch the next video and deepen your evolution. Your mind is already signaling it's ready. What are you becoming now that you finally see the game?